Yeah. All right. So one more try. I was muted myself. Thanks a lot for letting me know. And without further ado, another Thursday, another Webflow SEO live stream. Today we're chatting about what it takes to be aligned on design, on branding, on SEO when you're making a Webflow website. And our guest today is an SEO. Oh, geek as well. And I think I failed in the beginning, so let's start from scratch. Hey, Rob.
Hey, what's going on?
I haven't done this for a week, and I think I blasted, but doesn't matter. We're gonna catch up.
What's that?
So our guest today is Rob, and I think I should turn on the one sec. We're gonna turn on the show display names. Yes, right now we.
Nice.
So Rob is. You know what? I'm going to do a quick intro, and I think we're going to start there. I'm going to jump into a lot of just in general, what do you do? So yes, we're talking about balancing branding, design, and SEO, but maybe we're not. For those who don't know, follow Rob on Twitter. I really love the SEO dweeb thing. Tell me how that happened. How did this came to fruition when describing yourself?
Because this is mainly from clients. A lot of my clients are in the construction industry, and obviously nerd geek kind of thing. It's funny that they always pick on me for that, but just because the metrics and analytics I like to use, and I really deep dive into this kind of stuff and educating my clients and everything like that. I mean, that's something that I think I geek out about, and I think it's super important for a website, and that's why I dove so deep into that topic.
So your client, by the way, let's say hello to everybody. Hey, Marcelo, nice to see you here. Yeah, we fixed the no sound. Very sorry about that in the beginning. Hey,
Portugal,
Anna.
okay.
Hey, from Brazil. Hey, everybody. So geeking out clients. So you do a lot of teaching, because this sounds like you educate your clients quite a bit. Yeah?
I do. Yeah, because I'm sure anybody who has gotten the SEO field, if they take on a client and one of the first questions you ask is, hey, have you worked with an SEO agency before, SEO companies? Like, yeah, I have. I paid a guy at the beginning. I haven't talked to him in 8 months. He says he's doing his job. And that was early on one of those things that would set me apart, because I wanted to build transparency with what I'm doing and what their money's going towards, because I really targeted small businesses. I'm in a super small town, well, not as much anymore, outside of Orlando, Florida. So a lot of these smaller businesses, I mean, this is their hard-earned money. I mean, to sell somebody on a service like SEO, they need to generally understand it. And what I do is I take pride in educating them to where I send them a video at the end of each month, and I let them know exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we did it. And then kind of what the strategy is, because every website, every client, every service is different. And so that's one thing that I really like to educate the clients on, because maybe one day they'll say, hey, you said you're going to do this, or how come this is going that way? And again, it's just letting these smaller business owners, or even at a corporate level, giving them enough tools or I guess resources to make their best decisions, saying if they need to focus on a different service, or again, I'm going back to construction, but if they're a construction company and they want to focus more on roofing, but roofing's not working out, so let's add more juice to roofing and things like that. So better business strategies, I think. It's not just, hey, get me traffic, let's hope the phone rings. And that's kind of what I like to do. I like to break down and get under the hood and ask a lot of questions of a business and company, because it's not just, hey, I got the X amount of traffic, why are my phones not ringing? So there's a lot to uncover for sure.
Oh, so you mentioned a bit of a enterprise hire, but in general, you do mostly local SEO, that local businessman that does, or
I mean, that's how I started. And
okay.
so getting my first clients, like as I was going to my 9-to-5 job, I was probably about 45 minutes away. I would call the numbers on the side of service trucks and say, hey, do you guys need a website? Need a website? Check you guys out. How about this? How about that? And so that was kind of my main, that's how I got my foot in the door with the industry. a lot of construction, a lot of service-based industries. And so that's one thing that's really how I got started. So then I started getting more inquiries for bigger companies, and then I have a national products at like Shopify store, ecom, and then also like national brands for trucking and logistics and things like that. So I know there's people out there that like to niche down and say, oh, you got to have a niche, but I'm not at that point yet. I like to tackle different industries and different sizes because like I said, I've done everything from a one-man business to I sat at the round table with 6 C-suites. So I think that's something that that keeps my day fresh, and not every day is the same. I think that's important for me. May not be everybody's fix, but that's definitely my thing.
Really love that you mentioned that every project is a bit different, and I can really relate, I think, especially when you're SEO. A lot of people think SEO is like, adding a few keywords here and there, optimizing the page, but actually, or maybe make the big lighthouse number go up. But the way I see it, and I can sense you do the same, is more of understanding business operations, understanding where money is coming in, how much money is coming in, what kind of conversion means how much money, and from there trying to place best bets we have online to maybe move the needle, right? Is that some sort of process that you follow in detail, kind of the same way?
In terms of like, I guess uncovering what they have going on
in the beginning, you meet and that how does that whole relationship in the beginning look? Because the way I hear, and just because I know that's probably the only way to do it correctly, is there's a lot of digging and
for sure, absolutely.
So how does that beginning look?
Well, you got to ask all the right questions. You got to ask all the questions. And they're still clients now where I've been with them for 6 months, and it's like, well, why isn't this working? And I go to ask more questions. It's like, oh, like some things that could escape and kind of you don't think about. You need it 8 months later down the road. You're like, oh, man, you don't even have access to this X, Y, or Z. So that you got to ask all these questions up front, and that's a learning point too, to where anytime you go into you speak to a client, you get that face-to-face, or you get that Zoom call, whatever it is, that discovery call, you really want to understand where the money's going, how they're spending it, and what their issues are. So I forgot what book it was now, but one thing that kind of shifted my mindset and how I do things is trying to be a problem solver, not just a web designer. And then when I started doing web design, then I realized, okay, well, this company or this website, this business, they need more than just a pretty website. I've made this dope website. How come they're not getting any traffic or leads? And then that's when I started uncovering SEO. And then we talk about ad spend, what they do for PPC, why they do this, why they do that. So I've got my hands in terms of a service that I provide. It really depends on the client. And I know that's not the right answer, but I try to be pretty resourceful. So I have clients where I do websites and I manage their website on a monthly basis. Then I have clients that I do websites and SEO. Then I have clients that do website SEO and then email management, because that's important for the e-com space. So it really depends on what they're needing. And if I can do it, that's great. And if I can't, then I'll definitely find somebody who can and try to pass along that information. But I had a local client here that specifically, it's in construction, and I was asking like, okay, well, how much money are you spending here, there, blah, blah, blah. And then he asked about PPC, he asked about Google ads and Facebook ads. I said, okay, cool. That's definitely something I've experienced with. And I've messed around a little bit with some clients. I don't really sell it as a service, but I can help direct them or create some sort of strategy for that. And then I said, well, how much are you spending on Google ads? he had to call his wife, who managed it. And she said 15 to 20K a month. And I'm like, holy smokes. So that's definitely something that we need to buckle down, because they weren't getting the return on that, because the agency that they were using wasn't performing. And then she took it on herself, which she was learning, but that's a lot of money to learn with and play with. So then in a situation like that, what I try to do is minimize cost for them. which this goes way beyond the scope of like a web designer SEO specialist. But I say, okay, well, the 15 or 20K, we can spend a fraction of that on SEO. And that way we can kind of like balance it out to where it's not overload on ads that aren't even working, rather than spending some money on SEO, which is long-term organic growth, which is I'm a huge fan of. So I know PPC and ads, they have their place, but in terms of the long-term growth, as you know, and I'm sure anybody who's listening knows, is definitely king. I think except for those quick hit like e-com stores and products, things like that.
You mentioned in the beginning asking the right question. No worries, go. It's your moment. Do all the crazy stuff you want to tell us. Everything we want to learn everything. And you know what that brought me to mind? You have a very cool way of starting one of the pathways that clients I noticed on your site.
Oh, you're bringing the site up. Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I made a tiny more. Yeah. No, don't. It's honestly, I noticed that not a lot of start that way, but I really was happy to see that you have like quite a form that you kind of enroll your leads to. Is that like a great way to? Is this more for sifting clients that are not necessarily up your alley, or it's more of a for when you meet, you know already quite a lot that don't need to waste anybody's time, both yours and your clients?
Yeah.
It's more
so with that, it's funny that you pull that out, because I've definitely bounced back and forth in terms of that capture and sign up forms or contact forms or different ways. You can see I have another page. I'm not sure if I don't think I pushed it live yet, but where it's just a Calendly form, and it's definitely just, I've tried different, I guess, capture ways. So I've tried the type form, I've tried different. So I experiment all the time, and that goes back to, I guess, that dweeb title. But I experiment so many different ways. I do tons of A/B testing to what this Google form or what this type form does, what this static form that's on the Webflow directly on the page, or an embedded Calendly form. But to go back to your question, I think in terms of how deep you want to go with those questions, there was a point where, and everybody starts like this, and as they should, this kind of just this open funnel, and like whoever lands on my page, yes, I want to talk to you, I'll make anything work, whatever. And I've definitely been like that for sure. Again, I think that's the best way to learn. And then as you get down to like you're having these conversations, then your funnel gets smaller towards the bottom, to where now you have a minimum engagement. Now it's like, I don't want to call them tire kickers, because that's where it goes back. I do have a soft spot. So any local or small company that's watching this, but I like to work with the bigger brands, sure, but I really prefer the smaller brands. And sometimes that's a balancing act for me right now. Sometimes that minimum engagement, if it's 5,000, whatever it is for the website, then that smaller guy is going to be turned off and be like, "Nah, maybe I can't. I'm a softie, so maybe I can't start my dream, or maybe my passion's not real, whatever it is, because they can't afford it." Where if I were to meet that guy on the street, I would tell him, "Hey man, I can definitely help you out. I can do this. Let's do this." And that's how I got started, is helping other friends and other businesses that are local here. Because again, I'm in a small town, so everybody used to know everybody. And so there's a couple of my buddies that I did that with, like over a beer. It's like, "Hey man, we can do this. Let's do it. I'll help you out with the site." And then they turn that into a full-time job and quit their job.
So now which brings us to the question one of our listeners are having. So Ursal is asking, "Hey Rob, how did you get started with it?" And actually kind of started telling. That's why I wanted to add the second part of the question to this. What was that moment you realized the impact of it, and how did you start your whole learning process? So I assume we're looking for tips here, what to do in the beginning. If this is something you feel it's important for you and your clients, tell us the story now, again, from the same spot.
Yeah. No, for sure. So how I got started with it was I would build these websites. So how I started in web design, me and a buddy, we'd always kick around the idea of like an apparel company. And then we kind of made one on the side, which in reality just made designs, then put it on Shopify. And then we just did a shout out to our our city on Facebook, and people were buying from it. But with all that to be done, you need to learn design tools, you need to learn how to build a website. And so that's where the web design started. And then from there, that's where I had friends and other locals around me that were interested in a website, like, hey, I saw what you did with this. Can you help me out with that? And I would do that on the side. Obviously, this was through, this is, I guess, a little side hustle, but, and then other companies started coming to me. And I'm like, whoa, people are paying a pretty good amount for something like this that I know how to do. And then I would build the website, and then it's like, okay, well, I built a website. How come there's not a lot of traffic coming? I'm like, well, what do you mean? This is a good website. This is good. And this was an actual conversation, but this is something I was thinking where, okay, I built this dope website. It's pretty. It does all the things, but nobody's coming. Nobody's calling, nothing like that. So what did I really do other than just give them a pretty static page or thing to look at for somebody who comes on Google? And then I got into SEO, or why I'm not getting traffic. And then I got into SEO, and then realized how crazy that was. SEO, a lot of people, and me especially, a lot of people look at SEO. If you do a quick search for SEO or how to tackle SEO, it gets so technical. So you can get as deep as you want. There's people who are just crazy nuts about it, way more than I am, super technical. But it's pretty, once you get the basics, it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty easy to get things going and sustain that long-term growth with just some minor tweaks early on. And then obviously, as you get into it, you have different situations, different occurrences, different clients that need different things. And that's where you really start to learn. And I'm a big, I guess, trial by fire kind of guy. So everything I've done was self-taught, and YouTube University, that's really everything that I've learned on the computer is from YouTube. Kind of doing it myself and starting little businesses. And I've got 3 little side businesses I don't really mess with now, but I just tried it because, okay, well, I see on SEO or these keywords that this product has a low competition rating. So I try to do that on the side with house money, and then I apply that to my clients and see, I guess, work out that strategy. But it's just always educating yourself, and SEO doesn't have to be as technical as you want. It doesn't need to be that technical early on, but if you have a longer client, I guess, and the longer that you have them, the more technical it goes, because you need to find different tweaks and be ahead of that competitor, and that can change any different way. But yeah, in terms of how I learn and educate, it would just be YouTube, trial and error, a lot of trial and error. Because like I said, if I have a roofing company in Orlando, that's going to be a different strategy than roofing company in Atlanta or Houston and different cities. And so every service, every company, every client is different. So it's really being able to adapt and not being afraid to jump into different aspects.
So would you say that starting with your own apparel and in general, like having those issues that your clients, in most cases when they show up at your doorstep, have, was like the biggest learning curve for you? Because I would imagine my tip for a seller would be simple. Sometimes it's just your own site. Make it happen for your own site.
For sure.
And of course, you can take on clients and try that. But like trying with your own thing is already the best, both motivator when you reach it, but also motivator to, all right, get it somewhere. Not necessarily for something that will bring you traffic, but I type in something weird into Google and I show up. How did that happen?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah. And that's where it's cool. I mean, local, within a certain radius, I'm definitely ranking pretty high, if not the highest, on some of these services. So that's like an awesome moment. But back to answer your question, sorry, Marcella. What was the moment you realized the impact? So it was, I would say e-com. E-com's, I think, most fun. So one of my very first official client for SEO, which is still a client now over 2.5 years, would be in the fitness industry. And so literally selling like fat loss pills or and different gut health. And that's one of the most competitive industries. I mean, fat loss pill, you type that in, it's so competitive. And so we're able to find different angles to appear in those searches and be more relevant to where it's not just, okay, I entered fat loss pill on my Shopify store or my e-commerce page 50 times and I need that. But it's whenever we were able to create a strategy for that, that was like, damn, that was like a pat on the back. It's like, all right, well, we're able to rank for these keywords and in this industry. So that means we're definitely ready to roll this out. And so that's where started getting different clients and locally it's fun too, but the national brands is way more competitive and I'm definitely a competitive dude. So when we're able to rank nationally, I think that's huge.
So you mentioned a few times e-commerce. Would you think e-commerce in general, making that happen, is at core at what any other type of SEO fundamentally is? Or would you say it's different? How would you compare different types to e-commerce? Because I can feel that they're there to your heart, and I know the feeling because they're there to my heart as well. Not only
Yeah.
I have my own sites, e-commerce sites, but also at the same time, at least I personally fundamentally believe that things you learn with e-commerce repeats in any other industry. Doesn't matter if it's
For sure.
local or SaaS or whatever,
Yeah,
but you just have to learn how to adapt that knowledge. But
for sure.
so would you think that's like a great place to start if somebody's looking for entry level to just say, hey,
Yeah, for
you guys
sure.
have a shop, let me help you out. I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn at your expense. You don't need to pay me, but let's train
Yeah,
that.
for
Would
sure.
you say that?
I think 100% just because the kind of guy I am, that's like, I think those are two different dogs. So Shopify, I think, or e-commerce, I keep saying Shopify. I know this is Webflow, but I know Shopify and e-com is, I don't want to say like the big dogs, but it's a lot harder to rank. And I think for SEO goes, it's a lot more difficult. And I think in that way, because of like you're trying to sell a product national, right? Because if you just have a store that's selling locally, I mean, what's the point of even having a store really? But if you have, and I say like a local honey guy all the time as examples, but like you got a local honey guy in the street and he's got some bomb honey, you want to get this thing out, you know? And I've done this before of like clients. I'm like, man, have you ever thought about this? You thought about that? And we are actually able to build that. That's where we can. I always say I like to just drive ideas. But if you're a local guy and you want to start selling, that's whenever you open it up to start selling nationally or selling your brand or your product, see where it can take you. And I think selling on like if you're going to have local honey, if you're selling it on a national scale, that is far harder than selling it locally. So I think it's a little easier. It really depends on. I don't want to say easier. I'm sure some people are going to roast me, but I don't think local SEO is as difficult as ranking for like a fat loss pill or like a national product that you can sell and you can ship. Because if you're a roofer, you're not going to be a roofer in Orlando, in Florida, and then get a client in California. So why would you even worry about that? Other than building blogs and some relevant info. But I think if you really want to start Shopify, and unless you're the kind of person that might get discouraged, but Shopify and e-commerce is definitely difficult. If you can rank on that, then you can definitely rank locally. That's for sure.
All right. And do you work with like SaaSes? You mentioned like sitting in a room with C-suite professionals. Like, do you ever worked on any kind of SaaS or software or just in general that type of marketplace
Yeah.
project?
So I had one a little bit ago to where it's not really a SaaS, I guess, but what they do is they install their systems in corporate enterprises or they implement their systems in the corporate environment. So I guess that would be one, but they have a completely different structure or strategy. So it's not like a startup SaaS, but I haven't truly worked with a startup SaaS, I can say honestly. I mean, I hope not leaving anybody out, but yeah, not to my knowledge. I can't.
So if any startup SaaS is listening to this, go to Rob. He wants to work
Yeah.
with you. He wants to
Yeah,
get
for
all the
sure.
experience, and he clearly has experiences in other fields that he can change and adapt to your needs. So
For sure. Yeah, yeah. I've always tried to hit different industries too. That's another thing is any brewery I go to, any coffee shop, first thing I do, and my girlfriend always check. The first thing we do is like go on the website, see if I have one, see out what it looks like, and then whatever, try to talk with her because I definitely want to hit up coffee shops and breweries. I think that that's a super cool field. Not the most lucrative field, I guess, or industry or clientele, I guess. But it's definitely fun. Those fun projects for sure.
so a lot of Google My Business Management and a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
for sure.
updates.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All right. So we have a question from Marcelo, another one. If he specifies, if I understood that correctly, it can be just yes or no. But I'm pretty sure, I think I got it. The question goes something like this. Have you ever had a competitor of a client of yours looking for your services? How would you manage it? So my best guess is that this question is like, an example of you say supplement shop, and then another supplement shop shows up and say, hey, I want you to do that, which would mean
Yeah.
ranking against yourself in the
Right.
past.
Right.
I
So
imagine this is the question. Marcelo, I still ask the follow-up so he can say yes or no if that's really the question, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
imagine
for
that's
sure.
the question. So
I think that's it. Um, so I don't know. So this is a big thing, and this goes to, I mean, personally, I think it's ethics. And so, and I think it benefits me from coming from a smaller town to where I know most of the big dogs, I guess, in the construction or different services. So roofing, for example, I had a roofer come to me locally that said, "Hey, we want to work with you. We tried X, Y, Z. Let's do it." Okay, great. And then I had a construction client that was a general contractor, so they do like home builds, they do remodels, things like that. That was already a client. And then once I got the roofing client, then that construction client started to offer roofing services. And then that's when I let both sides know. I said, well, I am working with XYZ. So just to let you know, I don't feel it would be right to work with your roofing sector. And then once that other roofing company sold and they're gone, but then I was able to go back and say, all right, let's do it. Have that roofing company, they actually sold Aiva and they knew about it. And then so it's all transparency because I always think like, I don't know, I always think of the worst of that stuff. What if the owner, I guess company A were to see me at Publix or the grocery store and say, hey, that's so great working, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about this? And the other clients on the other side, the other line, then we talk to, I mean, I just think of like running into them in a actual setting. And then that's where you just seem like a scumbag. But to me, that's one thing that I would not do. I think there's just because, and I know people do it. There are companies and people that do that, and which to me is super shady because ideally you're the puppet master. If you have three different roofing companies, you can say, okay, well, we're ranking here if you're already ranking for that company, and then you have two companies that want to go on board. And if you say, yeah, let's do it, then you could say, okay, well, I think this company is spending $1,000 a month. I think you may need to spend 1,500. And then you can kind of dictate that in the level, and that's what you get into, I guess, a shady game. And I've had other companies that, and when you get into construction, I keep using construction, but when you get into construction companies, a lot of that industry is so tight knit to where they like to pass off different jobs and they say, oh, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for that. And then I've had companies in the same city refer me to the same industry, but a different company, and they're cool with that. I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to focus on remodels, not new home builds and things like that. So I think it can get pretty granular if you say, well, this company's focusing on roofing and this other company's focused on home remodels. Those are technically two different fields, or two different services. So I think that is, I guess, the difference in how you can do it. But like, just be straight up and transparent and say, hey, I'm actually working with this company. I don't feel right doing that. And then I think it's just coming down to be genuine. What if you were to run into both of them at the grocery store? I think that'd just be such an awkward thing. And then, like, again, you just look like a scumbag, I think.
Completely agree. So I have experience with doing that, but not like everybody would imagine. It's just the same client owns multiple things that are in the same industry and sometimes competing against itself. Just because so many projects under one team, so many sites. But yeah, I would also say no, just because then I'm already fighting everybody over there, and if I'm now fighting myself, this would mean that as you say, I can start. I must be like this. I can say, hey, these guys are paying $2,000. You have to pay $4,000.
And that's what gets me down to. I don't even want to get started on PPC and what all these other companies are doing. I mean, I don't even know how they're able to do that, but PPC, and that's just insane because it's Google and Facebook are saying, hey, if one company is spending $2,000 a day on this, then that's just going to raise the entire bar and say, okay, well, this cost per click or whatever, then you need over $2,000 to pay to play. It's like, okay, well, you have these people kind of dictating, and then now you're just always going up and then just keep getting richer. It's insane. I mean, I can go on forever about PPC, but.
You do a lot of PPC for your clients, which brings us also, okay.
No, not really. So, sorry.
Yeah, continue.
No, I was going to say, I tried not to. I'll try to suggest and strategize. I got into the PPC early on, and it was pretty successful. And then there's like a certain level to where okay, like a PPC phases out. There's just so much. I guess if you were to boil it down, I like the metrics and getting different demographics and the target audience. But in terms of how frequent, I mean, I talked about A/B testing before, but how much you have to go and change the copy and change the content and different designs and different images. I mean, for as much as you need, like you need so many different ad sets for that. And that's where a lot of companies, I'm sure everybody's seen it, where you have one company or one brand that you're like, okay, I've seen the same image like 10 or 20 times. I'm not going to buy those. And that's where you got to keep it fresh. And there's different funnels for everything. It just gets so wild. And so that's like a whole nother service. That's not something that, I mean, I think that's a whole nother world, PPC, because that's always changing and you need to have a different ad set for each stage of the funnel, and different copy for each one. So it's crazy.
All right, so let's check then what you actually do. So on your site, it says auditing keyword research, on-page optimization, content creation, link building, and analytics tracking. I want to jump into content creation. Tell us about the process that typical client goes through, because at least from my experience, there are clients that want to write it themselves. There are clients that want to hire somebody. There are clients that want you to do it. There are also clients with variations of all these three somehow mixed and matched together. How do you approach the whole content game, provided the basics of SEO is content and links? There's not much more to it fundamentally. So that part of content, how does that look for a typical client? What kind of struggles, what kind of cool stories you can tell us, like in general?
So, yeah, so there's all different, I guess, sizes or types of clients that I've worked with in the past. And I've spoke about before how I build websites. I built a website for a company that I've only seen that, like, it was only a DM, like Instagram message back and forth. Never heard the guy's voice, never jumped on a call, anything, just straight on DM. I mean, the check went through, the website went live, so everything was good. But in terms of that, he wanted to set it, forget it, those set it, forget it clients. And that is cool because you fully trust, or you just don't have time, or whatever the case is. And then you have other clients where I have a contractor that he's got a lot of information and he wants to write it. And then you have other clients that have a lot of information, but that don't want to write. And so that you got to find that balance where, yeah, you can provide your blog posts and your content, but you need to make sure that you have experience with that field, or at least even looking, and you can do that with data, I guess, questions asked, or there's like people asked. And so there's frequently asked questions around that topic. You want to make sure that if that topic has enough, I guess, relevance or traffic around it, then you can build that. And that's when you partner with your client and say, hey, what we have a topic about dental implants and see how that phases, things like that. Then that's when you obviously go to the specialist or the expert, because it's hard to, you don't want, especially with the dental industry, you don't want to, and fitness too, you don't want to, I guess, fluff any keywords, and you don't want to do that anyway, but you don't want to fluff content or like that's not right or they don't have time to look at. I know one of the dental is like charcoal, whether or not to use that. You don't want to put, if they don't believe that, you don't want to put that on their site. So you want to make sure the site and the content they have is verified by them, checked by them, everything like that. But also use them as a resource, not the only resource, but use them as a resource, and kind of, I guess, fact check with them and see if they approve that. And then I do have clients that do want to write. And so we can give them like topics and then kind of let them write, which is great. But it all depends on what level they're at and what they're able to do. And sometimes it's hard to be like, hey, you can never really want to say like, hey, this blog is trash. You don't want to post that. But you really want to spice up a little bit and give them a right format and right rubric to be like, okay, well, this is going to hit. This is what your audience is looking for. This is what your local area is looking for, things like that. So it really depends, and using different tools and different, I think one thing for me, a little quick nugget that has helped my websites and my clients' websites is getting those frequently asked questions, because those are obviously the questions that are being asked the most on that topic. And so you want to put that on your website or on that page that's relevant and then answer those in your way. And then that way you get a lot more quick hit traffic or relevant traffic. So.
All right. So people also answer that with frequently asked questions. Yeah. So you mentioned that sometimes they write it themselves, and you also mentioned that there is certain niches like lawyers, doctors. A lot of those have to be written by professional. Which, by the way, hey Raymar and or Colleen, thanks for joining. So
what up?
That being said, how does you mentioned like not small medium enterprises and especially in those industries, like how does SEO is quite a lot about content velocity. There is a cap on, I think, on every project, be it small or big, that you can reach. For some projects is 30, 50, 60, 80 pages. For some it's 300,000. But in general, there is a cap always somewhere. It exists from where you have to start deleting rather than publishing more and just connecting things together. How does that whole translate from your experience, like in general, content generation when clients write it? Is this something, because in the beginning you mentioned a lot of teaching goes in that. So do you do feedback loops or do you improve a lot on your own, or how does that look? Because from my at least experience, not every client, those who want to try it themselves, not necessarily always in the end should be the ones doing it. And there's like that hard place where you have to not only advise, but also advise on budget. Right. So in general, how does that whole experience where clients write the content look, and what did you learn from those experiences with that type of project?
Right. So with anything like that, I think and this can go with anything. So if you have a client that provides this blog post and they're so fired up about it, they're passionate about it, and it's completely off track or off the rails from your SEO guidance or any topic, you can provide them metrics. And again, this goes with anything, and that's kind of what I use as my debater or my I guess source of facts. Is I really just provide those facts where you can say, okay, well, and there's different situations, right? So if there's something like again, top of mind because I'm working with a construction client at the moment, or had a call this morning, but like if you want to talk about gutters in a certain area, it's like, well, gutters in Tampa, Florida, then it's like, okay, well, nobody's really searching that, or there's not enough, I guess, data behind that. for that topic to make sense. And if it does, and you think it does, we can try it and see if anybody actually searches that or has a hit. And then back to your point, you can say, well, this one's not hitting. It's been 8 months or whatever, and we're really trying everything we can. And so that topic isn't really relevant. So we might have to pull that back and go somewhere else. And it takes a lot for me to kind of remove, I guess, content from a site, unless it's like, what did you say, 300,000 pages or something like that. I mean, that's insane for me, I think. And so you would definitely want to clean those up a bit. And there's companies out there that have hired or outsourced like blog posts, and it's just, they get 2,000 blog posts for $500 or whatever. And so there's just a bunch of trash on there. And so that's where, in that sense, you want to clean it up and say, hey, these blog posts are 200 words long. This is not really relevant. There's not enough length. There's not enough data. There's not enough content for that. And it's not really answering the question. So Google's getting really good at making, I guess, giving relevant data for customers or users. So if you can't anymore, and like back in the day, I always hear stories, and this is way before my time, but people would have like keywords. So if you have your keyword cluster, you're doing your research. And so you have your one keyword and then your different supporting keywords. People would put that in the bottom of the page in transparent font. And then Google would say, oh, it just means X, Y, Z, and have all these keywords. So it's got to be relevant. Now, obviously, Google has a better understanding, and they're doing it almost every day of analyzing data, analyzing content to make sure it's relevant. So it's not just keywords in the right places anymore. It's definitely making sure that this topic or this content is answering this question or providing what this consumer needs or this user needs. So I guess, again, to long answer your question, a lot of data is what I use to help state my case or my point onto reasons why we need to fix this blog post or why that's not going to do well. And there's a lot of data, a lot of Google data. Anybody can get these numbers or these KPIs, I guess. What really sets you apart is what you're able to do with those numbers.
Which kind of also then adds to Marcelo's question from before, is also if you're starting, there's no other way than to a bit invest into certain SEO tools, be it Ahrefs or SEMrush or maybe some others, just to have something to rely your guesses on, even though they're not accurate all the time. But that gut feeling starts to evolve even without those tools as you use them. Because I noticed that like you just eventually, yet some things don't even need to actually that much research. Sometimes you just can wing it and say, I know definitely we have to do this, and this. And then when they're there, you can come back and recoup, as you say, like check 8 months later, this one doesn't work. So
and so one example I like to use too, and something similar, is the key, what you think is relevant or what you think users are searching may not always be the right case. And I'm sure everybody's come in contact with this, but one in particular was a dumpster company. So they do commercial dumpsters, and they do roll-offs and everything like that, to where, dumpsters, they had dumpsters on their site, that keyword and how big the dumpsters were. But then when we looked at the data, and I looked at Search Console, Ahrefs, all the data we were able to pull, people were actually searching bins, not dumpsters. And then once we were able to make that switch and incorporate bins and different terminology in that, and kind of more widespread target that keyword and give different clusters for that, that's when we were able to see some improvement. So it all depends. And that's a pretty lofty example, but you, I guess, really have to make sure that you're doing the right research and the right data. And you're not going to get it right the first month. The very first month, you're not going to have your perfect strategy. Okay, let me hit this for 6 months. It's going to be perfect. There's going to be rise and fall. I mean, it's a roller coaster as far as SEO goes. And there was one particular, I think it was May, I had all of my construction clients like contact me and be like, hey, we saw like there was a low, our traffic, I guess, kind of dropped. We had a low rate of conversion. What was going on? Blah, blah, blah. Can you help us out? And then I was able to compare, and that was just a low month for across the board for whatever reason. I think it was May. Whatever reason, there wasn't any inquiries. There wasn't any search. So it was just a weird thing how the planets aligned in a weird way that there wasn't anybody searching for that. So that was just very interesting. Things like that could happen. So things always change. You got to adapt. You have to adapt. It's hard to, you don't want to watch a SEO video and then one video and then try to apply that for a year and a half. Like it changes all the time, different strategies all the time.
Oh yeah, this reminds me of seasonal thing in SEO. One of my clients have a tool which is widely used by teachers, mostly 90%. So there's like hundreds of thousands of visitors every month, and then in the summer it's almost zero for 2 months, and then it's back to. And if you never experienced this in your lifetime, you can start to go insane when it goes from 100,000 hits to zero tomorrow.
And that's where, so I have different ecom. I mean, it may be different with services like that, but I have different ecom clients where, like, I have a paddleboard company that crushes it. And so if they have their low months, like in the winter, that's where you're able to then provide something else. So whether it be, and this is maybe completely different from what SEO topic or what many in here are focused on, but that's where it goes back to understanding the business. And so if it's slow in the winter and you know that, then let's try to get some, I mean, whether it be sales or coupons, anything like that, that's where you want to really capitalize on, like email engagement, things like that. So there's different ways. You always have to adapt. It's not just SEO, because SEO is not like a quick hit type of thing, but you do want to prep for those. If you know you're an outside company or product or a golf course up north, it's like, well, you know you're going to be shut down for 6 months or 5 months, whatever it is. You want to make sure either you squeeze everything you can when you are open, or give some incentives or something like that to where these companies or these clients, I guess, or customers are still coming and they have a reason to come.
All right, let's jump to another question from Marcel, and this one is about tools. I already shared a video I made what I use. It might be a little bit outdated. I know that one tool there, I said it's for free. It's no longer for free, but I shared a link so you can grab that. But what kind of tools do you use, Rob? What's mandatory in the beginning, and what's in general will be mandatory as the experience progresses? What you have to say on that?
I'm very resourceful and very cheap. So it took me a while to get on the Ahrefs, and then up until, I guess, actually last month, I had both Ahrefs and SEMrush. So, and SEMrush was a little different for me, and I've asked this question a trillion times. It all comes down to preference, I think. But for my tools, I use Ahrefs. I think Surfer SEO is a big one. I mean, that one is something that helps with some content writing. What else? Google Search Console, that's free. And that's definitely, I like Google Search Console a lot because you're able to see, I guess, more or less direct data, where Ahrefs and SEMrush is usually, I mean, there are, I guess, estimates, right? So they're not exact. What else? You talked about what people also ask. What other tools? So I'm a weirdo for like productivity and being structured and organized digitally, of course. But like if you were to check my truck or my house, it's not the same. But I'm a weirdo for being productive and detailed and organized. So I use Notion for everything that's stored, like my dashboard, everything that my client has. I give them a client facing dashboard. Let's see, what else? SEO related. Yeah, I think Ahrefs does a ton for me. Surfer SEO, ChatGPT. I mean, the AI stuff, it's super cool. It really depends on how you use it. And there's some people out there that just hit ChatGPT and then they just press play and run it and they'll just send it. But you need to have your, I guess, your filtration process, because it's just like anything else. If you have a copywriter, if you have a copywriter in your team come to you and say, hey, this is the blog post, you're not just going to blindly post it or just blindly do it, because at the end of the day, that's your company, that's your brand, that's your name. So you want to make sure that that's right. I have an experiment going on right now with AI. I don't want to give it out yet, but I just started it. So I'm going to see how that works. You can check back. But AI is so useful. So for Notion, I use AI for Notion a lot because it helps summarize like notes and like client calls or briefings, and then also like structure and organizing. So I get lazy with if I were to make lists or make things pretty in formatting, I can just select that area of text. If I guess brain dump, I can select it and say restructure with bullet point and H1 format, something like that, and then it really just makes it prettier and look nicer. And it's a lot quicker than I could ever do. And it's cool to kind of like bounce ideas off of, I guess, ChatGPT and AI. But yeah, don't blindly use the AI tools because it's like anything else. You're not just going to blindly submit something with your name on it or your company's name on it. Say I stand behind this, but this isn't right. So you want to make sure that it's relevant and it's actually like your tone and things like that.
Oh yeah, AI lies a lot and lies with a toddler face. I always agree. Like I started using AI for certain types of content 2 years ago when Jasper was just in beta, I think.
Jasper's another one I've used for like, I guess if I get stuck in like H1s or like title tags, things like that, that's something that I would use with now Chat GPT, which Jasper was kind of, I guess, one of the first ones in the game or gets widely known. And so I was on Jasper for a while. So far their program and the guys over there are awesome. And they're anytime we reach out, well, early on, I'm sure you still are in contact with the guys, but they're pretty responsive. And so now they've grown and they're huge. So yeah, that's one thing I kind of bounce back and forth for like I said, H1 or like subheadings or something like that. Like if I need a little and it's definitely good for writer's block if you get stuck on something and you're like, all right, let's see what this is like. And then you can kind of generate 10 subheadings for this topic, whatever it is, and you can kind of create your own. It's like, oh, that's a good spin, something like that. But I would never, I mean, I know there's people that do it all the time, create a 5,000 word blog post on how to brush your teeth. And then it's like, okay, well, that's a little much for me. It may work for some people, but I don't know. I'm still that old guy that's like, get off my grass. I don't really trust it too much yet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I tried. Started with Jasper, then jumped to Copy AI. Now I just pay for ChatGPT. Then maybe moving to some other tools. But the biggest thing for everybody who's considering this, my tip would be very simple. Know that it's like having the cheapest writer out there, like a toddler writer with perfect grammar, which is always confusing. And just because it predicts what looks right, but not what necessarily is right. And those tiny things, search engine since 2018 when BERT was released, which is a site algorithm within Google, is from then we don't need to stuff keywords, as you explained in the beginning, right? Earlier. And because it semantically understands certain things. So I don't need to use the word in 17 different phrases for you to understand that. When I'm talking about the fruit apple, not the computer apple. And when that happened, any minor mistake that can be spotted by any human, trust me, it will be spotted by crawlers because they have so many pages to analyze your facts against. And those tiny things, if they stay, it can be very easy to spot. So always be careful.
That's what I'm trying. I'm worried about like two things. One, not worried about, but curious about. It's not a main part of my business, I guess. But one, it's Google going to, and they have to, I guess, to filter out a lot of the noise and content. I'd like to see the amount of content from like whatever 2000 to like when AI was created, and I'm sure the spike is like that as far as content on the web and stuff. But I think Google might find a way to kind of like, I guess, determine if it's AI generated or something like that. And then also like, will that penalize you? I think that'd be interesting.
I saw a good post today, actually, as a complete accident on LinkedIn. Somebody, I think, Workella owner. So I don't know if you know Workella, where the best place to hire writers. Basically.
Yeah.
So he said, imagine if I would be Google and I would try to forbid people to abuse AI, I would do it like this.
Right.
I would allow it, I would index it, I would rank it, and then one day I would shut it down completely.
Yeah.
So it sends a message. And when you think about it, same thing happened with Panda in 2012 or what. There was very spammy internet, and it's been like this for quite a while. And when Google solved it, there was a lot of very frowny faces because the whole meta changed. So there could be this happening, but also at the same time, they themselves are not against AI. Nobody should be, but it's just understanding that it lies.
They've created their, what do they have? It's a Bard. I was on the beta test for that at Google Bard. So they're definitely getting in it, and that's another piece of where Google could do it because I know they control PPC as well, but like they could value their AI inputs more than ChatGPT, something like that. But and another part of that, I was going to see if I'm curious to see with so many users using AI. I mean, there's got to be repetitive content out there, right? Like if you and I type in the same, and I guess the odds are pretty slim, but if you and I type in the same prompt, I mean, what are the chances of us getting the same exact answer? I mean, it's got to be pretty high, right? But I guess they're kind of banking on the actual input it would be very rarely exact. I'm not sure, but that's got to be the point that's coming up.
Yeah,
that's what I'm afraid of. What if I make a blog post on that? If I make a blog post and then it's ranking, and then someone that like you post one same time, it's like, okay, same exact post. Someone's gonna get I mean, both of us would probably get penalized, but that's where I mean, that's got to happen sooner or later, if not already. I'm sure it has. Smarter people than me would know that.
If you understand how that process works, you understand the limitations of it and where it dooms itself and how it chokes. If you feed those tools their own data, they choke on it. So that's where you say similarities come into play, because those similarities are visible when we feed random data into it. But if we start that similar data feeding, then it chokes completely and dies on its own, and the algorithm breaks. So it's going to be interesting. But let's jump to another topic, which again, Marcelo. So he's considering Ahrefs
MVP, bro.
Yeah, I mean, that's what these streams are for. Who's ever want to ask questions will get those answered.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, did you plan him for this or what?
No, I'm not gonna confirm or disagree with my water present. So he's asking about Ahrefs and SEMrush. What would make you choose one over the other? I already shared one good tweet from Charles Flote. I think he summarized it best at one point, and very simple one. So do check that out. But what are your thoughts on this? What do you think?
What did he say? Because if you were to go back or follow me on Twitter, I've asked this question probably in the exact format like 6 times. Because I was trying to see. One of my things is I get stuck on like what are the experts use, or what are my competitors using, like, and I want to know why. And if not, I don't know what their preference is. And there's a lot of, I guess, big dog agencies or agencies out there that have both, and then they only use one primarily. But so I guess back to his question. Yeah, so something like that. Log files, cost, SEMrush for cost, huh? Okay. So I like Ahrefs for what I needed to do. So keyword research, competitive analysis, backlinks. I think that's kind of their name of the game, right? They're, I guess, backlink data is superior, or like that's what they got built on, I'm pretty sure. But SEMrush is one of those, I think they're that example of, and they're very, very good. But I think that only because they're focused on other things as well, they may just by default jump into that category as like, what's the, like, I guess, they're good at many different things, not great at one type of thing. I forgot that name term, but So they have a lot of like marketing, they have a lot of PPC, they have a lot of different, I think they're getting into email too. So they have a bunch of different tools. If you're like a one-man band and you want to do everything and all of it, that's great. Like more bang for your buck in terms of that way. But I'm not measuring PPC. I'm not measuring social media. I'm not measuring those other things. Whereas Ahrefs, that's all I need. That's all I need. And then it's, I guess, in terms of why I do it, it would be that, and then also just familiarity. So I started with Ahrefs, and I think the interface is a lot cleaner too. There's a ton of, they have their academy. There's a ton of good information. I think they kill it in terms of, I guess, education. There's so much on YouTube. Ahrefs, I forgot that damn guy's name now, but he crushes it, and he gets so in detail with everything. So, and that's one channel that I follow a lot because there's a lot of different changes. They're making great updates all the time. So that's why I choose Ahrefs. I think it's a little easier to navigate, and they're strictly focused on SEO.
My take would be, I use Ahrefs, so that's to get that out of the way. But I used SEMrush also for quite a while, and I would say SEMrush, the way I see it, has everything a little bit more simpler, but not in a sense as in UI or it's just more the data itself is less convoluted. So I would guess that, as you just said, if you're a one-man army and you're a beginner, in a way I would have arguments for, they have that magic keyword tool, which in the beginning, when you're not sure what you're doing, you just need ideas. That one especially is very, like, opens your eyes.
But they have a free, I think you can do a couple a day or something, right? I know I was floating on that for a while. And I'll try to cross-reference. If you have the funds for it, sure. But I cross-reference a lot, and I'm not sure exactly why. I guess everybody pulls different data, but there's sometimes where a keyword difficulty could be low on Ahrefs, and then it's super high on SEMrush. And then that's where I start questioning myself. I'm like, well, why is that the case? And then so you don't know who to believe. You're kind of doing yourself the service there. But I'm not sure why that happens all the time. And then when that does happen, like, who do you believe and why?
Honestly, you don't believe anybody because it's just so many different data sources that they mix and match together. And some of them repeat on both tools, some of them not. And it's just estimates because, and Ahrefs have one, I think, very good trick up their sleeve. I'm not saying that SEMrush doesn't have it, but more of Ahrefs, because for free, you can connect to your own site and see your own keywords and your own backlinks and your own a lot of things. Guess what? If you pay for it, you can see that data from other sites, which kind of, I think that's why I choose it. It's just because when you start to get deeper and deeper into the weeds, I think it's a more powerful tool. But again, like that tweet that we just looked at, they balance each other out, and there's still things that you would guess.
I think, better. I'm a sucker for design and sucker for UI, and I think Ahrefs got me on that. But again, I started using Ahrefs because one of the first videos I stumbled on with SEO was the Ahrefs channel. And that's just what I felt more comfortable with. And then I tried SEMrush about a year ago, and I'm like, oh, this is so weird. But then I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of good data here. But then I just reverted back to Ahrefs. So, like, and I'm a weirdo for shiny things as far as design goes. So any new tool, any new something, I'm always going to try it out for a little bit. And then if I don't like it, then ditch it. But definitely open up new tools all the time, and that Ahrefs definitely sticks out for me.
As for you mentioned SEO Surfer, and while we're on the topic of the tools, I personally use MarketMuse instead. Yeah, it's I like it more. It's just because what you want is to cross-reference your content against top 20 results. And Surfer has all that fun functionality where AI can write that content, but it becomes very costly. And for similar prices, you can get, on MarketMuse, you maybe can run 100 requests for a month, and then on like Surfer you run like 10, I think, or something like that.
Okay. Cool.
So it's also something, again, one of those, both are very different, do kind of the same thing fundamentally, but when you start looking at them, they do it very differently. But at the same time, it's something also to maybe for those who were interested in tools to look into. Maybe that's up their alley, maybe not.
I haven't even tried them yet, but I'm gonna try them out now.
Yeah, I love them. Honestly, I don't know if you know, Shane is also active on Twitter. I know recently we had a chat with him. He also started picking it up, but he asked like, "What is this tool this simple?" I'm like, "Yep, exactly that. It's that simple."
Okay, cool. Nice. Jasper's kind of become more, I guess, robust. Like they're trying to offer everything under the sun now. And I mean, I go in there, was the last couple days ago, and I'm like, whoa, they added all this new stuff. And I think Surfer's going to get that way too. But Surfer had a nice plugin with Jasper, I think, right? They had a nice plugin. They integrated with each other pretty well, which was cool. I think that was good. But yeah, I don't know. I got to try Market Muse.
All right. So if anybody has any last questions, drop them right now. I think we're going to be ending this soon. Thanks a lot, Rob, for coming.
Yeah, man, for sure.
I wanted to end with a quick question and then we jump off. We promised some touch up on branding design, but we mostly focused on SEO, which I assume will happen. That's why I sometimes pick titles loosely. So do you think there is a sacrifice for design and or branding or just design if you want to have the best SEO on your site? So I want to do this controversially. So is there a sacrifice on design if SEO is perfect?
Sacrifice on the yeah, so I think so. Or I guess it depends on your audience. So you got to think and per industry. So if I'm a service-based industry, if I'm a plumber, I do air conditioning, I don't even want to say elderly, but if I have somebody who's pissed off and they go on Google and they go on your website and then it's spinning and doing boxes and doing jumps and things like that. But it's like, okay, well, where's the call button? What's the number? What do you guys charge? What's the deal? That is going to set them off to that website. Like, all right, this is doing too much. And I'm going to back out and just find the next number. And I think it does sacrifice design. And that would be that would, I guess, differ greatly if you were in an art museum. If you have an art museum, yeah, for sure. Show off your design and show off the creativity because you are an art museum. And so if you're anything in design, like interior design or anything like that, I think you can show that off a little bit. But if you're I guess a service-based business and interested in making money, which I think, interested in getting those customers and converting those customers, I think user navigation is far superior, aside from like what service you actually provide. So I think it does. And one example is I had a client that I've worked with forever, and then I just got a wild hair to add a contact form in the header, which I've always been against. Always. I'm like, oh, this is so tacky. But of course, when I added it, conversion started going higher. They got a lot more contacts, a lot more inquiries. I'm like, oh, what the heck? I guess we got to leave it. But if it works, it works. That's the thing, is everybody's going to be different, because a lot of those guys are going to be kicking tires, like roofing companies or home builders, things like that. And I guess home builders not a good example, because if you want a custom home, you're going to want to go to a website and learn a lot about their information, learn about exactly what they do. Whereas if you have a flat, or if you have your toilet broke or your AC broke, you're going to go to them. You want their information quick and fast and call them. So I think it really depends on your industry. But quick answer, yes, I think it does. I think design does suffer from that.
I love it. Love the answer. Love the connotation with art gallery and different types of websites that are, you know, I would just add to that before we jump off that that's, I think, where a lot of people get SEO wrong because of how it was in 2012. And it's 11 years ago, we're still suffering from that when it was just spamming, spinning content. Even a lot of people probably don't even know what spinning content means, but trust me, it's worse than AI.
For sure.
And I think that's where some of the bad rep were just, oh, this guy SEO will just show up, stuff a bunch of keywords, make a bunch of random pages that are going to almost be identical. And it's sometimes it's kind of a little bit of that, but now when the semantics are so important and you can communicate so much information to structured data, it's no need to do that because there are other ways to talk to crawlers by not showing that to the user.
Right.
But I would say that to that design point, I think SEO fundamentally today is making the best library and best organized library for anybody visiting, and assuming that they might enter this room from any direction, from window, from the roof, from whatever. It's not starting on your homepage. It can start anywhere, and creating this complex system that is simple to use, simple to navigate, simple to understand, but it can be as big as you want it, need it to be, as many pages for different things, as much as you need, and a lot of things.
I agree.
So I think that's where design suffers, because then you start to having these structural problems. You know, how do I make that everything's reachable from homepage with 3 clicks when we have 200 pages? And that's where you say, well, this definitely doesn't need to move like that. We better add here 6 links and a checklist. So,
and design, I have a designer on my team. We go back and forth. She crushes it. She absolutely kills it. And she's like, well, why do you want testimonials on these pages? It's like, well, this is a landing page specific to this location. So that's the only page that they're going to land on. So we got to have, I guess, more or less similar structures to the other pages, because they're not going to go on the home page and then navigate to their location. They're going to land on the location and need everything they need on that one page. So they may, if you have your testimonials only on the testimonial page, or only on your home page, they may never see that.
And with that, we're going to end this. This was awesome. By the way, Marcella wanted to say this was amazing. Thanks to both of you for shining some lights. Great talk. Amazing. I love this every bit. I love where this went. I love your experience that you think. I love the way you think about sites, and I think more. We need more people like you and the Webflow community in general, just because, there's so many aspects to running a successful website. I saw the other day a very cool post from, I'm not going to name them because I forgot, but anyways, we should have to look it up. But it was like that any successful web project usually has 3 different professionals, and all of them are stakeholders, and it's usually project manager / SEO. That's one. Another triangle part is the designer and our UX designer, UI designer, and then the third one is the developer. And if they all 3 work together to solve problems, as opposed to one of them just calling the shots, because neither of them should call out the shots. And that's when that happens, you get the best projects. And I really was looking at it, and I think Webflow, currently the way I see it, community still lacks those professionals on that structural / project / business oriented part. But it's growing. People like you showing up, people like Shane showing up, Emmanuel, and a lot of other people that I forgot probably to name, but they're showing up, and they are. So thanks a lot for being in this talk. Thanks a lot. This stream is all about that, and you delivered on it 1000%, which was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. This is fun for sure.
All right, guys, say everybody bye to Rob. See you all next week. This was awesome. I think we're going to repeat this on something more specific. Thanks a lot for sharing your story, the way you think. And I think when we meet next time, there's going to be way much more interesting stuff, and maybe we're going to pick a more specific topic. I just really wanted to have you on for a long time, and I'm really glad I had it.
Awesome. Cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Anytime. I'm always down to do this. Super
All right, guys. See everybody next week. Bye, Rob. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
And
See
see
ya.
you next Thursday. Bye, everybody.